All right, it is 12 noon here in the Central Time Zone, so let's get started. Thanks for joining us today. A couple of things, just some housekeeping things. I will be watching for questions. There's that question box um, in the little control panel that you all have, so feel free to pepper away with questions. I will say this that I will also leave time at the end of the session. So if your question is super specific to what I'm talking about and it catches my eye as I am talking, I will stop and answer the question. But I promise we will dig through all the questions either during the presentation or afterwards. So have no fear. I will answer all of your questions to the best of my ability. So, all right. Welcome to the webinar. In case you are not familiar, this is Drew McClellan. I own Agency Management Institute and also own my own agency, which I have owned for 24 years. So today, what I want to really talk about, I want to focus on are some tools that I believe every AE should use. And I will tell you right up front that there are going to be no big shocking surprises here. But I also believe, as I was saying to an agency owner earlier today, that many of these tools, while you may be familiar with them, my experience is that most agencies or AEs don't use them at all or don't use them well. So I'm getting a message from someone that says they can't see my screen. Can the rest of you all see the screen? Can you all see the title slide of my slide? Okay, sounds like it's a technical issue on your end, Jane. Other folks are able to see it. So I'm going to change to the next slide. And one more time, give me a chorus of yeses if you saw the change. Okay, so did it change? No, it didn't change. So what? So somebody tell me what you see. You see the let's get started. Huh. All right, hang on. Now, do you see it? All right, there we go. All right, so here's the slide you missed. And here's the slide where we're going to. All right. Thank you guys for giving me that feedback. Okay. So here's what I want to cover today. We're going to talk about 3 tools that really need to be tools that AEs are using on a regular and consistent basis. And we'll talk about the timing of each of those tools. But these tools, I've sort of lumped them into 3 categories. One of the tools is what I believe is the sort of master document that helps you keep projects on time and on budget. Then I think there is a tool that will help you make sure that clients feel like they are in the loop. And this is a tool that I have had a ton of clients say to me, I count on that tool. So we're going to talk about that. And then we're going to talk about a tactic. It's not so much a tool that you can use to assuage the worry that clients tell us is one of the top worries that triggers them into going to shop for another agency. So that's what we're going to cover. Hang on. Now I'm going to delete all of your yeses. So thank you for being responsive, but otherwise I'll never see if you actually asked a question. This is what happens when you're driving and talking. So sit tight. Okay. All right. So let's talk about this first tool. This first tool, from the client's perspective, I think one of the things we forget about is how critical we are as account people to our clients. They literally, their jobs are on the line in terms of whether or not we do our job well or not. And so a lot of what I'm going to show you today is really about sort of coming from their perspective. And you know that we do a lot of research where we talk to agency clients all the time. And I'm going to even show you for each tool a comment, one of the verbatims that came out of the research that reminds me why these are so important. But I think one of the overarching messages I want to give you is that it's so easy to get involved in the day-to-day of your work that you sort of forget to see the world from your client's perspective. And at the end of the day, that's your job. You are the client's representative inside the agency. You are also the agency's representative inside the client relationship. And of course, you also have to represent the creative team inside of all of this. So, as many of you know, I think that this is the toughest job in the house. You really do serve multiple masters, and I think that's a challenge. But no one else is representing the client's point of view. No one else really understands the client the way you do. And so inside the agency, oftentimes you have to be the voice of the client. And you need to be able to think about and come at these things from their perspective. So here's sort of the client's perspective, which is I need you to save my bacon. I am scrambling. I often am not giving you the kind of input that you need. I probably am half telling you what you need to know, but nonetheless, I need you to make sure that I don't crash and burn. And so what I really need you to do is, in some ways, I need you to do my job for me. In other words, keep us on track, right? I need you to keep me in the loop and on track. Yes, I'm a grown up. Yes, I'm a professional, but I've got a lot of things going on, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And I'm counting on you to be the organized one. And then finally, it is I have to show up in the C-suite, and I have to show up in department meetings with big ideas. I have to produce big ideas. Otherwise, I'm going to lose my job. And guess what, account executive? I'm counting on you to help me do that. You are my thinking partner. You are my teammate. You are oftentimes the only person that, for political reasons or whatever, I can talk to candidly about what's happening inside the business. And I need to feel like you are my advocate. So that's from the client's perspective, what they're thinking, whether they ever say it to us or not. They do say it to us in the research, but they probably don't say it directly to you. But this is what they're looking to you for. They're counting on you to do this. And so today I want to just show you some tools that will help you meet and exceed these expectations. Whoops, got a little click happy there. So number one job for you, without a doubt, is keeping the clients that you have and growing them. Remember that 70% of an agency's new revenue, so money that they didn't have in 2017, but they got in 2018, 70% of that should come from existing clients, which means 70% of the client's growth or the agency's growth sits on your shoulders. So understand that is your number one responsibility, is to keep the clients that you have, exceed their expectations, and when there is the opportunity for it, to grow that book of business. So this first tool is really measure twice, cut once kind of a tool. And what I mean by that is when you don't do this at all, or when you do this quickly or sloppily or poorly, or when you don't even have the tool in-house, which I know many agencies don't have, you are often going to have to go back and do something again. And at the end of the day, you're responsible for your work, your work on behalf of clients to come in on time and on budget. And this tool really helps you do that. So it is the marketing and or creative brief. And some agencies have blended these together. Some agencies have more of a strategy brief and then a creative brief. But this is the master document. And this is the document where you, the account person, are in essence setting the stage for all the work that's going to be done and making sure that what you heard the client say is accurately translated to your internal team, and making sure what you think you heard the client say is actually what they said. So when you get this right, your project has a much better shot at being completed on time and on budget. And I'm going to show you some examples of done well, right? Somebody's asking me if you can get a copy of this. Yes, anybody who signs up for any of our webinars, just as a general rule, you always will get a link for the replay video. So yes, Jason, if you need to scoot out early, break a leg on the pitch, and sometime tomorrow, probably late in the day, you'll get an email with a link, okay? So when you do creative briefs well and right, they are this master document that everyone can refer to. But the first place where this matters is with the client. So when you get it wrong or you don't do it, which is often the case, you're going to do this work more than once, and you're going to do it on the agency's dime. And ultimately, you have to make sure that you are delivering exactly what the client wanted in the way the client wanted it. And the creative brief or the marketing brief is the perfect way to have that conversation. So let me give you a little more detail about that. So this came out of this year's research where clients said the number one reason why they give work to an agency as opposed to keeping it in-house, or as opposed to giving it to an agency and deciding the agency is not ill-equipped to do the work and bringing work in-house that they would have left with the agency, is this sentence: I need you to do it right the first time without a lot of supervision from me. And for you to be able to do that, you have to know that you are headed down the right path in the very beginning. So you've got to do this marketing or creative brief, and you've got to do it in a way that it is useful. So what I find is I'm going to say 75% of agencies either hardly ever or don't do marketing or creative briefs at all. And I would say the 20 of the 25% that do them on a regular basis, quite honestly, do them in a very haphazard way. So it's a single sentence, it's sloppy. They for the same client, they almost always read exactly the same. So there's no thought really being put into this document. There's no thinking that if I got hit by a bus tomorrow, would the team still get this right? And that's really what you need to be thinking about as you put it together. But most importantly, it's I'm about to show this to the client, and this is my opportunity to demonstrate that A, I heard them, B, I've put some strategic thought into this, C, we have a plan and a strategy for helping them achieve their objectives. So this is really a proof point for you with the client that shows that you are a good thinker and that you are thinking on their behalf. Back to that, hey, I need you to do my job for me. It also will very quickly identify if there are holes in what the client said to you or gave you. And all of this is done before you start the work, before you have any of your creatives or anyone else has started to actually do the work. So you have no risk of having to redo it. So one of the things I'm going to do is this is just a screenshot of a document that we've put together that has a bunch of sample questions. So I am not suggesting that your creative brief should include all of these questions. But what I am suggesting is that I want you to compare your existing creative brief to the questions on this list and see if they are if they're forcing you to go as deep as some of these questions do. I think you probably have some questions you can swap out for better questions. If putting together a creative brief is easy for you, if you can do it in 10 or 15 minutes, if you only do it every so often or episodically, in all of those cases, you're doing it wrong. This should be a challenging assignment. This should be difficult for you in terms of, I want you to push yourself to be thinking about some of these questions in a deeper way and making sure that you articulate. A lot of times what happens with an AE, especially if you've worked with a client for a while, is that you know the answers to these questions and you know that they're pretty robust answers, but you put a one sentence answer on here, which is fine because it triggers your memory, but for everybody else on the team and for the client, it's not enough. So this document should be a pretty robust document in terms of the way that you answer these questions. So let me give you some examples of some questions that I think are strong questions. Who has this problem? In other words, what audience? So we've already identified what the problem is we're trying to solve. That's earlier in the creative brief. But who has this problem? So this is all around audience and things like that, right? Then how are they solving it now? So if the problem exists now and they don't know about us, how are they solving it? Are they solving it in a DIY way? Are they buying it from someone else? And how is our solution actually better for them? What do they have to give up to accept our solution? And what do they gain that makes the loss of whatever they have to give up worth it? These are thought-provoking questions. These are not target audience, demographics. These are not bullet point answer questions. These are answers that require some articulation on your part, which is what makes this document actually useful. Why should they trust us? And when I say us, obviously, where I'm talking about the client. So provide both excuse me, head and heart reasons why they would buy what our client is selling. We all know that everyone buys based on emotion, but they often need facts to justify the choice that they're making. So we need to make sure we have both head and heart reasons for the purchase. What misperceptions, try that again, Drew. What misperceptions are there about the clients and services? So again, this is you helping everybody on the team and the client think through, what do we have to undo before we can lead to somebody having a trial or consideration period or a purchase? Are there things are there truths that we have to tell to fix what people may believe about either the category or our product specifically or whatever it is? And then how do we want them to feel about taking that action? And this one, I love this question because it reminds us that we always sort of think about when someone buys a new car or they buy a vacation or they buy, whatever it is, a new printer, a new computer, that it's always a happy occasion. And the truth of the matter is sometimes people have to buy stuff that they don't want to buy. So as you can see with this example, I can buy the best casket in the world and I can get a great deal on it and not be happy about it. So really thinking about at a deeper level, what's the emotional journey that our customer is on, both when they have this problem and with them weighing their options and ultimately when they make that purchase. And the document, which I will include, so it'll be when I send you a link, to the replay video. And I've got a couple documents that I'm going to mention to you in this webinar that I'm also going to include download links for you to grab. So you can grab that creative brief sample. And again, I am not suggesting that you should have all of those questions on your creative brief. I'm just suggesting either A, you can use those to put together a creative brief if you don't have one, or B, you might want to swap out some of these questions for some of yours that maybe aren't as strong. All right. So, how do you do this? So, first of all, just the mechanics of this. Not every job has to get a creative brief. So, you as an agency should have sort of a criteria by which a job or a project for a client is worthy of a creative brief. And so in some cases, it's type. Like there may be some jobs, like I'm just going to say a website, something big that is always going to be complex enough that it requires the creative brief. Or it may be certain projects, if they're super simple and down and dirty, they don't. But if they get above a certain budget point, they do. But all of you inside the account service department and inside the agency should have a common understanding that says, here's how and when we do a creative brief. So that's number one. And then I think you need to define where the creative brief happens. So here's the process, right? So when you write the creative brief, hang on, I'm just going to click it here. When you write the creative brief, you need to make sure that A, the client sees it first and signs off on it. And then, hang on, I'm just going to click through this. All right. So then let me just walk you through all of this. So A, define the jobs that get the creative brief. So type and budget. Decide where, once everything is done and the work is going on, where do you keep it? Because everybody should be able to get to it for quick reference. So back in the old days of agency life, we had physical job jackets that moved around as the work got done. Most agencies do not have that anymore. We have some sort of an electronic version of that. So if I'm the copywriter, I should know where to go to look at the creative brief. I should know where to go to reference that. When you are getting everybody together to review the creative or the strategy before it is internally presented. So not before you show it to a client, but before you're going to review it internally to decide if it's ready to show to a client. That is when you should reread as a team. You're going to bring everybody together, reread the creative brief. And the reason why you reread it is to remind you that what it is we're trying to accomplish, so that as you're reviewing the strategy or the creative, you are checking it against the creative brief. This is a step that almost every agency skips. So you write a creative brief and you show it to the client, maybe. You show it to the creative team, maybe. But you do not then review it again, ever. It never comes back out of the job jacket, literally or figuratively. And what I'm saying is, if I'm the account person and the creative team is getting ready to show me creative work, I want to read out loud the creative brief with them before they present it. Because then that's going to remind them how to present it to me, because they or I am going to have to present it to a client. So we want to tie it back to the creative brief. You also want to review the creative brief with the client before you present the work. And what this does is this helps clients not be so subjective. You know how a client, something is right on point and it's perfect, and you show it to the client and they go, oh, that's not what I wanted. Well, remind them what it was that they asked for by reviewing the creative brief, because then it's hard to be so subjective about the creative. If it does what they asked you to do, now, okay, then that's great. We can move forward. So the account person writes it, the client reviews and signs it, the team reads and reacts to it during the kickoff meeting, and then you pull it back out before an internal presentation and before you present it to the client. Okay? Anybody have questions specifically about that? Somebody said define creative brief, discovery call. This is when it may be during a discovery call that you ask the questions that it requires you to do to write the creative brief. But a lot of times, especially if you already know the client, this may be a client says, hey, we need a widget. And you can probably fill out most of this from just that, because you know the client. If it's a new client, you may have to have more of a discovery conversation, right? Somebody says, this is where we struggle. Yep. This is where a lot of people struggle. So this is one of those things where it is so easy to convince yourself that you don't have the time to do this, right? But I'm telling you, if you don't take the time to do this, you are going to waste more time and money and profitability of the job. This is definitely a measure twice, cut once tool that will save your agency time and money every single time. Is the creative brief concept the same as a strategy brief? For most people, no, this is not tied to campaigns. So this could be a standalone. This could be for a trade show booth. This could be for a content strategy. This could be, and for every one of you, depending on the clients that you serve, your creative brief or strategy brief. And again, for most of you, it's a combo of the two. It's a mix of sort of the marketing strategy and the creative direction. For most of you, it's going to need to be different because of the kind of clients you serve. All right. Should this also include the cost of the project? No, this is not a scope of work document. This is this is you saying, I want to make sure I understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, who we're doing it to, and how we define success. So one of the questions on the sample is, how will the client measure success? Okay. So this is not a scope of work document. A scope of work document, which we're not going to talk about today, but is equally important, where we make a mistake on the scope documents, is that they're not detailed enough. And so clients can say, well, it didn't say I couldn't have 27 revisions, so I do want to have another revision. So that's where scope documents bite an agency in the rear end, is that they are not detailed enough. But no, this is not that document. What about moving targets and the client that gives a vague brief or keeps changing? Well, so the other beautiful thing about this is when this is done and the client signs off on it, and if the client doesn't sign off on it, say, okay, then I'm going to come over, or I'm going to get on the phone, or we're going to get on Zoom, and we got to figure this out, because we can't get started on the work until we know what you're asking us to do. So A, this document gets clients off the dime, and B, these questions force a client to be more specific and more articulate about what they want. And if they change it, odds are they're going to change your scope document more than they're going to change this. But if they do change this, then now you have the argument and the justification and the conversation with the client about, well, we're 2/3 of the way into the work, so we absolutely can go back and change the audience or whatever it is they want to change, but that's going to trigger a change order. If you don't have this document, you can't have that conversation. Someone says, you suggest that we get the client to sign off on the brief. Does that mean the client has to respond to an email with the word approved, or do you get a signature? Kind of depends on your client. So for some of you, a lot of you are using electronic signature tools like, DocuSign or things like that. So you can do that. Some of you are just getting an email back from a client that says, yes, this is right. Others of you are seeing the client physically when you're presenting this, and then sure, just have them sign it. It doesn't matter how you sign it. The point is the signature is symbolic. It's basically them saying, yes, I agree to this, right? But it is not that you physically have to have their signature. You just need something that says that they saw it and they agreed to it. So somebody said, which comes first, the scope of work or the brief? Typically, the scope of work is going to come first because it's hard for you to answer these questions if you don't know what you're building. So the difference is the scope of work is, let me give you an analogy. A scope of work is me coming to you as a client and saying, I want to build a house. And you say, well, okay, how many bedrooms? How many bathrooms? Do you want a pool? Do you want a garage? That's what the scope of work outlines, like what's in the house. The creative brief is, who do you want to live in the house? How should the house be decorated? Who are we getting it ready for? What should people feel like when they walk in the house? That's the difference between those two. Okay. Somebody says it says the account person writes it. If it's a strategic brief, wouldn't the strategy team write it? Very few agencies differentiate between a strategic team and an account service team. In most agencies, the account person is the strategy person. If the document is truly a strategic brief and that's all it is, and you have a different strategic department or person, then yes, they could write it. But I will say, I think the account person has to play a role in that as well, because they're the ones who know the clients best. All right, I'm going to move on so we get through more than 4 slides on the deck. So the number 2 tool, this is the client's phrase. I am one lapse of memory away from losing my mind and my job. And this is how they feel every day. We think we're in a lot of meetings and we think we're under a lot of pressure. Their world is very different than ours. They literally are running from meeting to meeting to meeting almost all day long. And they're answering their email while they are walking through the hallway, trying not to bump into people. And so one of the challenges for them is keeping up with everything that they've got us doing and remembering what they need to do, when they need to do it, where it's at. But on any given day, someone's going to stick their head in their office door and say, hey, where are we at with the XYZ project? And that question causes a huge panic in our client's heart, because if they don't know the answer to that question, they look stupid. And so this next tool I'm going to show you is all about giving them peace of mind. So for those of you that have your clients that sort of micromanage you and are always texting you or bugging you about where are we at with this, what they're really saying to you is, I need more communication. I need to be in the loop because I'm being asked questions that I don't know the answer to. I know that we have a weekly status call, and I know you probably told me this, but I don't remember. I need something that is a memory aid and a tool for knowing where everything is at. So really what the client is asking you to do on this case is keep me on track. And so what that means is, here's the truth. Your client does not want you to fail, and they don't want you to miss a deadline, and they certainly do not mean to be an obstacle. And yet we often do fail. We often do miss deadlines, and it often is the client's fault because they are an obstacle. This tool helps eliminate some of that. They don't mean to do it, but their busyness and their running and putting out fires all day is part of the problem. And so this tool helps us stay on their radar screen. And the truth of it is odds are you are never going to be their biggest fire, no matter how hot the project is, unless the CEO is breathing down their neck about when the website is launching or something like that. What you have to talk to a client about is never going to be their biggest concern. So again, what this tool does is it puts it in front of them, not in a fire way, but in a sort of reminder, sort of subtle nagging sort of way. And honestly, it's the account person's job to help the client do their job. And this tool does that. This helps you as the AE, or if you're the agency owner, this helps your account person actually do their job well. So from the 2017 research, we specifically This research was fascinating. We specifically talked to clients about their relationship with account executives and what they wanted. And here was a verbatim that has really stuck with me. I am counting on you keeping both of us on task and on time. I'm counting on you to do that. I acknowledge, I will probably never say this out loud, but I acknowledge that I need help getting my work done and that I need you to be organized and buttoned up and have a system for keeping both of us on task and on time. And so the tool for that is, quite honestly, it's a weekly status report. And we'll get into, the whether or not you have calls and all that sort of stuff. But and I will stick this is just an Excel document, and you can change the columns or whatever, but this seems to be the cadence of things at work. So it's basically the project name, the current status, what the next step is, when is it due, who's responsible for that next step, which is a critical one, because this is your way to sort of subtly nag the client that something is getting close to being due and it's on them. What is the subsequent step after this next one? Who's responsible for that? So on, so on, so on. So what I love about this tool is it's super simple, but it is something that you're going to send them. You're going to send them every week. So you have to be 110% consistent with this tool because they are going to very quickly come to rely on this tool. So you don't want to set them up to fail when they go to look for this week's status update and it's not there. So this has to be something that you do like clockwork. And I recommend that you send it to them Thursday around 2:00. And there is a very specific reason for that, which is for some reason, we always make Fridays due dates for everything. I don't know why we do it. When you think about it, it's sort of stupid. But it also just naturally, we want to get things off our desk by the end of the day, Friday. So when the client gets this status report on Thursday around 2, they still have a day and a half in essence to do what they need to do to get their work done, to cross things off their list. So we've tested this in all the different days. And in terms of like getting a response from clients and getting them to turn the work around, Thursday around 2 is better than Friday morning because this way, Thursday night, they're like, oh, I got to do that tomorrow. But there is this impending doom of the end of the week that creates pressure for them to try and get things done. Or in fairness, pressure for you, because you're also going to share this internally with your internal team, your account team. So you're going to use color like red or orange, or I don't care what it is, but you're going to use color to highlight these things are done. And in particular, past due deadlines or things that are coming up. So again, this is a subtle visual nag for you to remind your client that you're waiting on stuff. If you do status calls, so a lot of people say, well, we do status calls on Tuesday morning, so I'm going to just give them this on Tuesday morning. You can do that, but I want you to send an updated version on Thursday at 2 for the reasons I just outlined. So if you want to update it twice a week, that's fine. If you have a status call where you're going to basically go through a list like this anyway, it may make sense to update it for that Tuesday morning call, but I still want you to send it to them Thursday around 2 because hopefully things have changed. And if not, you are still waiting on things from them. So you still need to create that urgency towards the end of the week and be super careful not to use agency jargon or codes. So if you remember, the very first column in that document was like a job number. It's okay to do that because that helps you keep track of all of it. But in the rest of it, make sure it's just plain old English so that they understand exactly what you're talking about. Like if you have some weird job naming code that is a little confusing, don't use that. Use the language that the two of you use when you talk about the project. Okay? So hang on, I'm going to stop here and get some questions. What percentage of agencies do you see where the AEs do the sales strategy and the relationship upkeep, weekly calls, etc.? No, it's fine. I think that in most agencies, the AEs are doing all of it other than sales. So most AEs are not super involved in biz dev, but they are involved in upselling new projects to clients. So in that they are, in terms of growing the client's annual spend and their AGI, that is, AEs are involved in that. But most AEs are driving strategy for the client, and it maybe they have a team. So you may have a more senior account person and maybe an account coordinator. So it's not always on one person, but all of those responsibilities, sales to existing clients or growth of existing clients, strategy, and the actual relationship often exist in the same person or team. Do you recommend using Excel as opposed to a Google Doc? No, I think you can use it either way. People just have a preference for tools. So you can, I'm agnostic for Excel versus Google Docs. I do think Microsoft is evil, but that's a different discussion. So whatever works for you. The key is though, it just got to be easy, and these are a pain to put together the first time. Um, but then after that, you're really just updating the same document. So, and for a quarter, I would leave, unless you have a client that has like a bazillion jobs, I would leave the finished jobs on there as well, because you also want to remind the client of all the things that you've accomplished and gotten done. So you might gray them out or make them not as noticeable on the screen, but you don't necessarily have to delete them. So you're really just updating a document. So the first time you create them, it's kind of a pain. But after that, you're just adding and subtracting commentary. Somebody says, if the AE has a huge book of clients with active jobs, do you ever feel it's appropriate for project managers to do the status calls? You know what? I think you have to decide who owns the relationship. And I think depending on the client size and their value to the agency, you will put the appropriate team. I think we sometimes worry too much about following the exact rigid rules around that, but someone has to own that relationship and someone has to be the main point of contact. So I don't really care who it is. Typically in most agencies, project managers, unless they are true project managers, meaning that's going to be their job forever, and in that case, they don't have a lot of client contact at all. In many agencies, we're calling account coordinators project managers these days. I don't know, maybe that makes people feel better about the title. But in that case, unless it's a pretty small client, no, I wouldn't say an entry level person should be doing that. Okay. All right. Any other questions about the weekly status report? I know I'm going through this stuff fast, but we only have an hour together. So, all right. So the third tool or trick. So here is the thing what that clients worry about. This is the concern that they have that makes them start to hunt for a new agency. After a while, one of the things I hear a lot of clients say is after we've won their business and after the honeymoon phase is over, they feel like we're phoning it in, that they're seeing the same kind of solutions, they're seeing the same sort of answers, they're seeing the same marketing strategy or editorial calendar or whatever it is, and it feels to them like we sort of burned through all of our big ideas for them to earn their business, and now we're just kind of dialing it in. And for them, that's super frustrating. And so what an AE will often say to me in the live AE bootcamp workshops is, well, we tried to take ideas to clients and they never buy them, so we stopped. Or our client's super conservative, so we just don't bother doing it because they're not going to say yes. This has nothing to do with whether or not they buy the idea. This is what they're saying to us in this is, you don't love me as much anymore. You're taking me for granted. That's what this is really saying. It's about the big idea, but it's also about them feeling like we're not wooing them anymore. We're not romancing them anymore. All right. So really this is all about bring me some big ideas. So again, as I said, we stop romancing them after we catch them. This is a common complaint that they have. The truth is sometimes when you have a heavy client load, you're very focused on just getting stuff done, checking boxes. I have a lot of deadlines. I have a lot of clients. I'm juggling a lot of things. And if we're very honest with ourselves, sometimes, quite honestly, we are phoning it in a little bit. We aren't thinking about that client we aren't sitting and thinking on their behalf. We aren't coming up with big ideas unless we're being paid to or we're asked to. But often we are so task oriented in the account service world that we really are checking boxes. But the truth of the matter is we have to deliver sizzle with the steak. They expect us to be idea machines. It's one of the reasons why they engage with agencies over doing it themselves. It's also, by the way, one of the ways that you can get a client who's taken a lot of work in-house to come on back. Because the truth of the matter is they struggle with big ideas because they're inside the bottle. And it's very difficult to see the label of the bottle from inside the bottle. So they struggle with big ideas, and certainly big ideas that are not something somebody's already doing in their industry. We are the idea machine, and that's what they expect from us. We have to deliver on that. And out of the 2016 research, this was a verbatim, it feels like they keep recycling the same ideas over and over. And this was in response to a question of what triggers you to start looking for a new agency? When do you not feel like the agency is a good fit anymore? So the third tactic, if you will, it's not really a tool, is I want you to start taking them big ideas that they aren't expecting. And let me tell you how to get that done. So this is, you're going to have, depending on the client, actually, I'm going to go back a second. It's a better looking slide. Depending on the client, you are going to have what I call an idea palooza or a brain dump meeting. What you're going to do is you're going to bring, so at the most, you're going to do this once a quarter for your really big clients. And at the least, you should do this once a year for your smaller clients. And if you can't give up an hour and a half or two for a client once a year, I don't know why you have that client. So there is no client too small for this. Otherwise, they really shouldn't be on your roster. I'm not talking about somebody who comes in and does one project and then goes away. I'm talking about clients that you're doing some sort of ongoing work for. Can you guys hear me? Somebody said they lost my audio. Anybody? Can you hear me? Okay. I don't know how to answer Tony. Hang on a second. I'm going to tell him that everybody else can hear me. Hold on. Sorry about this. This is a weird. Okay. Hang on. I'm going to answer Tony that everyone else can hear me. Okay. I have sent that to Tony. All right. So anyway, the idea palooza. So once a quarter for your biggest clients, once a year for your smallest clients. And what you're going to do is I would do this over a lunch hour. I would bring pizza in because, we always work better for food. And I would bring in the regular team that works on the account, but I would also bring in a handful of people who have nothing to do with this account. If your agency is so small or the client is so big that everybody does, I might invite some smart people from outside the agency. All right. So what you're going to do is over the course of the hour, you're going to give them a 5-minute sort of, here's who they are. Here's who their competitors are. Here's the kind of things we're doing for them now. And then you're going to say, okay, go. And your job is just to put a big bunch of white paper on the wall and collect any idea or thought anyone has. So it's just, what are some things we could do to help them get more attention, sell more things, whatever their challenges are, present some challenges to the group, and then let them go wild. And I really mean that when I say go wild. And so some of the rules of engagement around this are no censoring or no editing. So you're going to collect all of these ideas. And then what I want you to do is I want you to put it together in some sort of a list format. So this is not beautified. This is not a PowerPoint deck. You're not making a video pitching these ideas. You are literally calling the client and saying, hey, Drew, I brought a team of 10 people together and we spent about an hour and a half thinking about your business and some of your challenges. And I want to make it really clear right up front, Drew, we're not charging you for this time. We just wanted to really think about your business. And we put together a list of ideas. And I got to tell you, Drew, some of them are a little off the beaten path. Some of them are a little crazy. But I want to bring them to you and I want to walk you through them. And some of them I know are going to make you laugh and some of them are probably going to make you shake your head. But I think some of them are going to get us thinking. And I just want to run you through them to show you what we've been thinking and to kind of get your reaction to them to see if there's anything there worth exploring. And then you set up a meeting. Again, if they're across the country, Zoom or whatever it may be, or you go down and sit across the table from them, as novel a concept as that is. And then you present it. But again, you don't pretty up the list. And honestly, if there aren't some ideas where you think, oh, I don't know if we should show this to Drew, you didn't think hard enough. You didn't push the team hard enough. There should be some crazy, we should fly a blimp over the Super Bowl kind of ideas in this. This is a no holds barred, pure brainstorming. We are going to think big and bold and all of that. Okay. And then here's the key thing I want you to understand. It does not matter if you sell them an idea off the list. Remember the goal. The goal is for them to feel romance. The goal is for them to see that you are capable of big ideas and different ideas and ideas that stretch their boundaries, and that you are not always sticking your hand in their pocket to think on their behalf, that this is a gift that you as an agency are doing for them because they matter to you. But I will also tell you this, you will almost always sell them something. May not be that day, but you're going to get them thinking. And it may be that they actually buy something off the list, or it may be that something on the list triggered an idea, or it may be something else. But at the end of the day, what you've done is you have solidified the relationship. You have demonstrated that you are good thinkers. You have demonstrated that you have a commitment to their business and their success, and that you are willing to do things on their behalf just because it's the right thing to do. And it will improve your relationship with them. It will improve the way they look at you, that they think about you as a thinking partner rather than an order taker. So there's all kinds of good things that come out of this. All right. All right. Hang on. I see a question. Is it ever a good idea to invite the client to the brainstorm? You know what? That's a very client specific thing. So I think it is a greater gift when you do it without them. I think it's okay if they want to, if you have a very collaborative client, what you could do is say, hey, we did this. I want to share this list with you. And then we'd like to invite you back to think with us, to play with some of these ideas. But I think part of it is, it's sort of like, when someone gives you a gift when it's not your birthday, or when someone sends you flowers when it's not a holiday or Valentine's Day and they didn't mess up, they're not trying to get out of trouble. There's something magical about the just because gift. And this to me is a just because gift. Okay. Any other questions about that particular tactic? All right. So hang on a second here. So a couple things. If any of this was valuable to you and you want, if you're an AE and you want to level up your skills, if you're an agency owner and you want to level up your account service folks, you have some options here. So I don't know if you know it or not, but we actually have an on-demand, it's a video course of our AE bootcamp, which we'll send you an email about, or you can go on the website right now and look. But we've got a discounted price coming out at the end of the year, so I'd wait for the email. Or we do live AE boot camps where I teach this stuff in a room with a bunch of AEs. Both of those workshops, the entry level one, which is somebody who has 0 years of experience to about 4 years of experience, is in September, early in September. And then the advanced one for anybody with more than 4 years of experience is late in September. So, all right. So with that, what questions do you guys have for me? Okay. So do you guys offer specific brief writing courses? No, we don't. We haven't done that. We talk about it and we do an exercise on it in some of the boot camps, but we don't specifically have a course around that. But that's an interesting idea. I'll give that some thought. Other questions you have for me about any of this stuff or anything inside the account service world? You guys are kind of quiet today. I'm great. So somebody said they are AE Bootcamp alumni and watching and listening, and they've been implementing some of these. Great. And they their endorsement is they definitely work. So that's good. I'm glad to hear that you're doing it. Good for you, because a lot of people go to workshops and they go back to work and they don't necessarily put it into play. So good on you to do that. And I'm glad to hear that it works. What's your approach to coaching AEs and helping them develop? You know what? I just was having a conversation with an agency owner today, and I think a lot of times, whether you're a super senior AE, maybe you're a department head, or you're an agency owner, it's so easy to just fix it, to redline something or to correct the creative brief. And honestly, all of us learned how to do our job because we sort of got thrown into the fire. And so my approach to coaching AEs is that you meet with them regularly, that you have one-on-one meetings with them on a regular basis. And if you want more information on that, I did a podcast on how to do that. And I think it's podcast number 15, if I remember right. But you also coach and mentor rather than fix and do. And I think a lot of agency owners and leaders are guilty of the fixing and doing because it's faster. So the analogy I use is for any of you that have kids, you know how long it takes to grocery store shop with a toddler, right? Because it takes them an hour to walk up an aisle. But we let them do that oftentimes. And if we keep scooping them up and carrying them, they're never going to learn how to walk. So same thing with the AEs. We have to let them sort of toddle around and walk, but we also want to be nearby to catch them if they fall. So I think it's those one-on-one meetings and more mentoring and coaching and less doing. You bet. Happy to give you the refresher. They said, we have given good ideas to one of our big clients and they've taken it to another supplier to execute. Yep, that is the risk. But I'm telling you, they think about you differently. So my guess is what happened, and I could be wrong. My guess is what happened is they took it to somebody who could execute less expensively. And honestly, I think it's okay to say to a client, I'm a believer in this kind of a conversation with a client. Hey, we have a bunch of ideas. Some of these you have to let us do. They really are. They require a depth of skill that we have. Some of them you'd be silly to pay us to do. And others, it's really a matter of whether or not you have more time or more resource in terms of money. You could do them. We can teach you how to do them. Or you could find someone less expensive than us to do them because they're sort of down, dirty, and simple. Or we can do them for you. So I would not stop giving a client ideas just because they might take them somewhere else. I think you run a greater risk of losing them altogether if you do not take them good ideas. Do you have compensation info for account teams, whether in this or online? Are you talking about how to pay them? Is that what the question is, BJ? You're going to have to clarify that for me. How do you write an inspired brief when you're writing one every single week? Well, I think part of it is it may be that you're writing briefs for projects that are too small to need a brief. You may need to have a brief light for something that is not that complicated. And honestly, I think the inspired brief, I'm not talking about spending 20 hours on the brief, but I am talking about spending an hour on it and maybe kicking it around with somebody else. And if the project is that big, you should be baking that time into the scope of work so you have the time to do it. And if you don't love the strategy part, if you don't love the figuring this all out, good AEs sort of look at our work like it's a puzzle and they're trying to sort of figure out how all the puzzle pieces play together. If that's not what you love, then I think you have to think about whether or not this is the right work for you, because that's actually the fun part of our job. But my guess is what you're feeling is time strapped, and you need to make sure that you bake that hour or 2 hours into the scope of work so you have the time to do it. And if you don't have room in the scope of work to bake that time in, maybe the project isn't worthy of a creative brief. Any ideas how many accounts an AE can handle at once? You have 20 to 25 per rep. So every one of your AEs handles 20 to 25. That's a lot. So so your AEs are order takers. If they're serving 25 clients, there is no way they can possibly be thinking about clients from a strategic point of view. But the rule of thumb is an AE, not with 25 clients, but an AE with a normal number of clients, 4 to 6 or so, can handle about $500,000 to $600,000 worth of AGI. What do you consider to be a minimum project scope to warrant developing a creative brief? That's going to be really specific to an agency, but the follow-up question is, would you do one for a single print ad or only for a whole campaign? If we were doing a print ad and it was going to run one time in one publication, so I think about both the dollar amount the client is spending with us and also what they're spending on the media, I probably wouldn't. I would probably do an abbreviated version. If we're doing one ad, but it's going to run in the Wall Street Journal, Yeah, I'd do a creative brief. Or if we're running one ad, but they're going to run it for 13 weeks all over the country or all over the region or all over the city, then yeah, I would do that. Someone says, I need to sell some of these ideas to the team. What is the best way? Yeah, I would do a lunch and learn. I would show them this video and then I would pause it after each of these tools and talk about it as a team. How do we do this? How do we? So I wouldn't just have them watch the video, I would participate in the conversation. Do we agree that this is important for our agency? Do we agree that this would be helpful for our clients? Would this increase our retention and our ability to grow the clients? And if so, how are we going to put this into the workflow? How are we going to make this something that says we absolutely have to do this? We're all going to agree that this is a best practice and we are going to perform this on however we decide we're going to do it. How often should an AE go see the client in person? Okay, so somebody said budget and account side aside. The more time that a client will give you of FaceTime, if a client is ever willing to see you, go see them. One of the things that old school AEs, and this isn't necessarily a chronological age, it's just a mindset. One of the things that relationship based old school AEs are really good at is getting FaceTime with clients. And by the way, that is not always 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. That might be you go golfing with a client on Saturday. It might be that you take them to the theater because you know they love it, or whatever it is, or grab a drink after work, or grab breakfast before work. So sometimes you have to get a little creative about your scheduling, and sometimes you have to use some of your personal time to do this to build the relationship. But as a general rule, I would say that an AE should physically be in front of the client at least once a month. And if they're local to you, I would say more often. There is never, until the client says, my God, I just cannot see your face one more time. There is never too much time spent with a client. That's where you have these sort of offhanded conversations that lead to more work and lead to you becoming their thinking partner. Yeah, you're welcome. I'll see you next week in Orlando too. Would love to would love to have some AMI resources around how to upsell and maintain current accounts. Uh, you know what? So we do talk about some of that in the boot camps, but let me think about that. Honestly, some of these tools will help you with that, the upsell, and the idea palooza will certainly help you with that. But let me think about if there are some other ways to do that, and if so, I will write a blog post about it, and hopefully you're keeping an eye on that. So I'll give that some more thought. If the clients are out of state or another city, then I would say then now it's based on budget, because now you have to get on a plane or get in a car and you're going to give up a day to travel. So I would say that, you know, this is going to be budget related. So certainly you should have FaceTime with a client at least once or twice a year. And for a good size client, a client that you really want to keep, I'm going to say once a quarter. The client status document is also a huge tool for management. Absolutely. So we can easily check in on a Google Doc and not micromanage projects. And by the way, this is good for clients stopping to micromanage you. And it's also good for your boss, as this is suggesting, stopping to micromanage you, because everyone can take a breath and know where everything's at and that everything's on track. So you're absolutely right. It's a great internal tool as well. We started at Okay, good. I'm glad they said they started using this tool after the hearing on the podcast. So great. How do you teach sales skills? Is it possible? Absolutely. And here's the deal. Sales skills are not we always react to sales like it's a bad thing. And when you start thinking about sales as it's my job to look for ways to help our client do business better, sell more things, get more leads, whatever it is. And it's my job to suggest ways for them to be more successful. And quite honestly, when you take out of the equation, and we have to be the ones to do it, it's my job to know their business well enough to say, you know what, I wonder if you package that differently, if you could shave 5 cents off of each product or whatever it is. That's when you know you're a great AE. When you are advising the client and thinking about the client's business really from their lens and their perspective. And you are merely making suggestions or saying, you know what, I was thinking the other day, what if we tried this or what if we tried that? And in some cases, it is work that you as the agency are going to execute. And in other cases, it may be work that they do internally. It may be another department altogether. That's how you sell a client. Because when you start doing that, now every time you say to a client, you know, I was thinking, or hey, I have an idea, they're not immediately covering their wallet and thinking, oh, I know what this is about. Now they're open to your ideas. Now they are open to hearing you because you genuinely have documented and proven that you care about their business. That's how we sell clients. The reality is, I don't care what widget, tool, new channel, or whatever. If the client is not ready to try it or buy it, there is nothing we can do to sell it, right? And so you absolutely have to be somebody who is thinking about the client from their perspective and just bringing them good ideas. One of the mantras you should be thinking in your head is, have I helped my client do their job better this week? And if I haven't, I better hurry up and do that before the week is out. If you want your AEs to be thinkers rather than doers, by the way, it is 1:00. So if you have to go, feel free to go. It looks like some of you have already gone. I will stay and answer all these questions and for another 30 minutes if I need to. And then I have to take off. But if you want to stick around, I am happy to keep answering your questions. If you want your AEs to be thinkers rather than doers, what would be the top 3 things you would encourage? The number one thing I would do is I would encourage my AEs to ask better questions. We go right to the answers too fast. We make assumptions. So that would be the number one thing I would do is, how do you ask better questions? Number 2, I would encourage my AEs to spend more time on the client's premise, traveling with the salespeople, going to a trade show, being on the factory floor, listening when somebody is presenting a new home, if they are building houses, whatever it is. The more you can absorb the client's business, you will naturally become a better thinker. So that's 2. And the third one is read. The more you read about our business, about marketing, about trends, all of those things, you will be a more strategic thinker. I have never met a super strategic AE who was not well read. And when I say read, it doesn't necessarily mean holding a book. It could mean listening to podcasts. It could be listening to audiobooks, but somebody who is constantly consuming information and knowledge. So that's my 3 recommendations. Will you recommend an AE work for a long time with the same account? Yes, I think as long as the client is happy with the AE, there is no reason why you should rock that boat. If they have a good relationship, that I would leave that baby intact. So oftentimes one of the biggest complaints clients have is that they have a revolving door of AEs. They don't like it when we change up their AEs. They get used to each other. They get used to each other's work style and things like that. What's the most common thing you find AEs overlook and need to learn from? We rush from client request to answer all too fast. So we need to stop and ask questions. I think a lot of AEs are worried about looking uninformed or not as bright as they are. So they avoid asking questions that they really should ask. And I would say that we have to slow down. And that's the other thing the creative brief does. It forces us to slow down and ask questions of ourselves and of the client. And really, you can ask even the dumbest question in a way that it doesn't sound dumb. And I am a believer in there really are no dumb questions. But the more questions you ask, also, it triggers the client to think more. So especially if a client is reacting to something, you slowing them down and asking questions means that whatever it is you end up doing for them is going to be better thought out and probably more on target. Okay, so BJ, you're back to the how do you compensate? So base and commission. I am not a fan of commission for AEs. I do not believe they should be paid that way. I think they should be paid straight salary. So the reality is agency life is a team sport. So unless they are a pure salesperson and they are out selling brand new clients that you have never met before and they are hunting them down and bringing them in all by themselves, the only person who should be paid a commission in an agency, in my opinion, is a salesperson. And an AE is not, at the end of the day, a salesperson. Yes, they upsell clients, but that's about helping their clients grow their business, not so much just pure sales. How would you motivate your clients to increase their marketing efforts when they've recently had record years? Bring them better ideas, show them ways that they can continue those record years. Nobody is going to just give us more money. I don't care how much money they have. Nobody is excited about that. So if they've just climbed a big mountain, I would figure out what is their next mountain. The more you understand what a client's goals are, here's a great AE tip. Every AE should be able to tell me how their contact inside the company gets rewarded. What did they have to do to get a bonus, to get a promotion, whatever? We should know that, because that's how you get a client to spend more money, is to help them be more successful themselves and their department and the company. We work in the furniture world where promos are changing every week or so. So is that related to the why would I do a creative brief every week? Is that what you're asking, Sarah? So I would argue that probably those promos, if you're doing a lot of throwaway work, right? That is like it's around for a week and then it's gone. Surely there is some bigger premise around that work that is sort of the overarching message or theme or messaging you're doing. I would say you're probably doing a creative brief once a quarter on that. And then you're really doing either a scope of work or you're just defining what is the message this week for this promotion, but you're not going through all of the rigmarole of how are people who don't have furniture solving that problem. You're not doing that every week. One of our clients is the VP of marketing of a construction company, and she recently said she doesn't believe that she should be held accountable for bringing business to the company. That really threw our team for a loop, and I'm wondering how we can help the client realize the impact of their department and their own work. Yeah, okay, so that's a sticky wicket. So that's a client, my guess is that's a client that is not going to be a VP of marketing for very long, number one. But number two, I think what you have to do is it depends on who you have contacts with. So this is where it gets really risky if we only have contact with one person inside the company. So if the only point of contact you have is the VP of marketing, then you're going to have to get really clear with her about what her goals are and how she is going to define success. And what I would say to her is, what are your bosses telling you success looks like? What are they asking us to do together? What metrics matter? What are the company's goals for the year? How can we do that? So if she's just talking about doing awareness campaigns or brand work, then you've got to figure out, okay, how do we translate it? How do we measure the value of that? And you need to try and bake that into the work that you do. But what I would be doing with somebody with that attitude is I would be creating relationships with other people so that when she gets fired, you have other relationships inside the client. Maybe you did a podcast on that, looking for industry salary bases plus bonus structures. Okay, so to that question, we have a salary survey on the website. It's about a year and a half old. We're just now in the field right now asking people to share their salaries with us and the benefits package. So we'll have a new one in early 2019. But you can get the old one. And it's not that old. It's only about 18 months, but you can get the old one on the website under the resources tab, I think. Is the 4 to 6 accounts per AE, assuming someone else is doing the project managing? No. Again, these questions, some of these questions, you guys are a little like you saying to me, how much does a house cost? So 4 to 6 accounts per AE completely depends on, is each account spending $20,000? Then no, they don't need a project manager. If each account is spending $500,000, then yeah, they probably need some support. So it's not that cut and dry. It really is about the volume of work that the AE is managing. And an AE, so remember I said to you, an AE should be able to handle $500,000 to $600,000 of adjusted gross income. But that number goes down the more clients they have to handle. So if they're handling one client, they can probably do more than 600,000. If they're doing 10 clients, they're probably on the low end of that spectrum because they have to keep changing hats all the time. And every client requires a certain amount of care. How do you continue to romance and push clients who are very hesitant or even resistant? You know what? You just keep romancing them. You just keep taking ideas. You have to let go of the idea, Will, that success is them buying an idea. Remember, the romancing is just, I want you to know I'm thinking about you. I want you to know that we're generating these ideas. I want you to know that we are always willing to try something new. And the other thing, another way to romance them, if the big idea thing is not something they enjoy, then I would romance them by educating them, by making sure that you are constantly keeping them current on trends, both in their industry and in marketing. But you have to keep helping them. Again, the question in your head is, have I helped my client do their job better this week? Have I helped them be smarter and better at their job? And that's how you romance them. Do you think a true AE is a good idea, strategy person and a good project manager? In a small agency, I expect multiple hats, but is it realistic? You know what? Having somebody specialize and either be a great idea strategy person or somebody who is sort of driving projects through the agency is a luxury that comes with a mid-sized agency. So the reality is, Rusty, whether they're good at it or not, it's what you have to do. When you're in a shop where you have 3 or 4 AEs total, they have to be able to do it all. And so you may give up a little on the fringe. Maybe their ideas aren't quite as great, and maybe you as the owner have to help them get over the hump to the really superior ideas. Or maybe they're not quite as buttoned up on the details, and you've got to have an account coordinator who sort of runs underneath all of the AEs to kind of check to make sure all the details are covered. But the truth of it is, in most small agencies, yes, they have to be a pretty good generalist when it comes to account service. Um, do you see account planner versus AE role as vastly different? Well, in some agencies, they're going to have a strategy department, right? Or they're going to have a strategy person, which is sort of an account planner. So, account planner is a term that was coined in the UK, actually, but we call it a strategy person typically in the US. But are they vastly different? They can be. And in some agencies, they are, where the account person is really just responsible for the relationship with the client, being on call, having FaceTime, updating the client on where things are at, really more of a project manager, and really understanding the industry and being a thinking partner. And the strategist is the one that's keeping track on what's happening in the industry, what's happening in marketing, what are the trends, what new tools or channels can we use. But again, in many agencies, that would be a luxury. Grabbing X number of people to brainstorm big, bold ideas likely not to be solved. That time will really start to add up. So does losing a client. So there, so how do you justify the time spent with little to no return? Honestly, if you go into it with that attitude, don't do it. You justify it by saying, I am retaining this client by romancing them, and odds are they're going to buy one of these ideas sooner or later, or one of these ideas is going to trigger a new idea, or it's going to get them to recommend us to someone else because they love the fact that we bring them big ideas. I promise you there is ROI, but you can't look at it as I walked in with 4 ideas. I didn't walk out with any money in my pocket. That was a waste of time. You can't look at it through that lens. New business question. What are some ideas to catch the interest of another agency's clients who might be unhappy and looking to make the switch? Any icebreaker techniques to approaching them and seeing if they're looking for new ideas? It's pretty hard to do if you don't have a relationship with them. So I think part of it is creating relationships. Um, and then honestly, I think for a lot of agencies, it's about content and it's about pursuit. So I think it's about both the push and pull of content. So I'm going to push content out that helps them do their job better. And if they're on my targeted list and they're one of my, at AMI, we talk about having sort of a list of sweet spot clients, 25 clients that are sort of your dream clients that you're going to chase after until they either hire you or they get a restraining order. So if they're on that list, then I am proactively trying to help them do their job better. I'm not necessarily talking to them about agency work. They know why I'm doing it. They're not stupid, but I'm not pitching them. I am just, again, helping them get smarter and better at their job. And on the day that the agency ticks them off, you're going to get the call. But again, until they're ready to buy, there's nothing you can do to make them fire that agency and hire you. So what you want to do is you want to be top of mind on the day that the agency does something boneheaded enough that they're ready to fire them. So it's just about creating and cultivating a relationship and demonstrating how smart you are and how valuable you are to them. And by the way, that has nothing to do with talking about yourself. That's about you helping them be better at their job. I hate to sound like a broken record, but this is one of the places where account executives and agency owners really, really mess up is we think that we have to demonstrate how smart we are by talking about ourselves. And honestly, the agencies that do this best rarely talk about themselves. Should the project strategy time be baked into the overall costs? Uh, yeah. So first of all, I think you should give I don't think you should give clients line item budgets. So, but do they value it? Sure. That how in the world? Otherwise, you're just an order taker. They may not articulate that they value it, but you're just baking in the thinking time and the, for example, the writing the creative brief. That's just part of the job. And if a client won't pay you to do your job well, they are not a good client. And so, I mean, that's just the reality is they have to understand that you can't just wave a magic wand and ta-da, they now have an ad campaign that's going to sell, 10% more than their goal. That just isn't the way that works. So it just should be baked into the scope of work, but I wouldn't line item it out. It would just be like, we're going to make you these things and the price is $25,000. I wouldn't tell them how you spend that time and money. The less detail you can put into the pricing part of your scope document, the better, because otherwise a client goes, you're going to take 2 hours to write that? Oh my gosh, my grandma could write that in an hour, right? You just give them reasons to nitpick it. Will you recommend an AE for new business exclusively? Meaning, would I have them just sell new business? So no, most AEs are not great salespeople. The owner has to be the salesperson, or you need to hire a salesperson. Most AEs are great relationship builders. They are great at marketing strategy, but they are not. They are not hunters. They are gatherers. So you need a hunter in the sales role, and almost always, like 999 times out of 1,000, the best salesperson and the most appropriate salesperson, whether you want to do it or not, is the agency owner. Okay, part two of the question. If the AE knows big ideas won't get life, but to keep the romance going, should I suggest bold, zany ideas and embellish the story of how he got the ideas without consulting my team? No. Do it the way I'm telling you to do it, which is I promise you, you're going to actually have better ideas and ideas that are more sellable if you include other people in the mix. So either don't do it at all or embrace the tool and do it. You're welcome. Somebody just wrote a question. Bonnie, I think it was you, something about calculating something and I accidentally deleted it. Sorry. Can you re-ask it? When initially selling a new account as an owner, should I take the likely account rep with me? Absolutely. You want to create a relationship with that person early on so you can hand it off. And by the way, it's not just take them with you, but you have to let them talk and you have to let them begin to create chemistry with that client because otherwise the client is going to resist the handoff. But absolutely, one of the mistakes we make in biz dev is that we let the prospect get too attached to whoever's selling them, and then they don't want to let go. They get wrapped around their leg like they're whoopee, and they don't want to let go of the whoopee. And if you're the agency owner or the salesperson, that is a problem, right? So absolutely, bring them with and let them play an active role. Let them do part of the talking, let them do part of the pitching, let them begin to create a rapport with that prospect. All right, I am not seeing any more questions, so I will give you, this is your last shot. Anybody else have any other questions for me? Going once, going twice. There it goes. Okay. When clarifying project scope, is it okay to ask the client if they want big ideas for a particularly big project? I would like to show off all the time, and I imagine our clients want to expect that, but they can also be very budget sensitive. I'm not sure it takes all that much longer to spend some time thinking about a big idea. If it's a big project, to me, I think that's a given that we have to take them big ideas. Absolutely. If it's a little piddly thing, then sometimes a bill insert is just a bill insert, and it doesn't really require a creative brief or a creative brainstorming session. It's a bill insert, right? So I think you have to be able to sort of measure the importance and value of a project. And honestly, if you can't bring big ideas to big projects, then if I'm the client, I'm concerned about your capability of doing that work. So if I the client define it as a big deal, then yeah, I think you have to bring me some big ideas. And I think you price it appropriately too. And if a client won't pay that price, then you have to take away some of the deliverables, but don't take away the thinking. Take away, we're going to show you 3 options, we're only going to show you 2, or whatever it may be. But try and trim the budget in other places, not in the thinking, because that's what's either going to win or lose the opportunity for you. And it's also going to be what either delivers for the client or not. And if you can't deliver ROI, you don't get another project. All right. All right. Any last questions, guys? All right. Thank you very much. I know most of you have skipped out, but I'm going to say this anyway for the video, if nothing else. We will email you tomorrow with a link where you can download this video and the samples of the 2 tools I talked about. And as always, if you have questions, feel free to fire me an email. And also check out the boot camps, either the live ones or the on-demand course. And I promise we'll be sending you an offer, a year-end discount on that on-demand AE bootcamp. So watch for that email, I'm sure, in the next couple days. All right. Thanks for coming, guys. Appreciate it.